Second session of Chapter 1, Physical and Chemical Changes and Properties of Matter. And physical property is the property of matter that can be detected by our senses, like qualitative properties, color, odor, taste. We can detect it by our senses, and quantitative properties like mass, density, temperature, we can also detect it by our senses. Is hot or cold, it is heavy or light. So those are all the physical properties. Physical properties, the quantitative the quantitative physical properties, they all have a unit like a mass, gram, kilogram, volume, milliliter, cubic centimeter. And after we know physical properties, and we need to learn physical changes. What is a physical change? Physical change is a process that changes the physical property of a substance. Without change is chemical property. So only physical property change, but a chemical property doesn't change in a physical change. So a physical change is easily reversed, and the final product is identical to the original material. So, okay, let me give you an example. And water is a liquid, right? So if I lower the temperature, water becomes ice. And ice still H2O. So you can see their physical property change is already changed from a liquid to a solid. So it changed the physical property. But the chemical property is still the same. They are still H2O, H2O. So chemically act exactly the same. So that means this process you call freezing is a physical change. And it's easily reversed. If I increase the temperature, I'm gonna melt it. The ice gonna melt, become water again. And originally water and even the melt water is the same. So the product is identical to the original material. It's exactly the same thing before it before it frozen and melt. Okay. And the changes in physical state are physical change, like liquid to solid, solid to liquid. That's the change of physical state, and is a physical change. Not only freezing, melting are physical changes, and the other physical state change, like vaporization, condensation, and sublimation, deposition, those are all the change of physical state. And they are all physical changes. And for all those physical change term, you need to know. Okay, so we're all familiar with melting, freezing, that is from solid to liquid or liquid to solid. But from liquid to gas, evaporation, vaporization, and from gas to liquid, do you know what's that called? That process called condensation. Make sure you know how to spell it. And from gas to solid, it called deposition. From solid to gas, it called sublimation. Okay, make sure you know how to spell this. And we already know physical property. The change of physical property is physical change. Now let's see what is a chemical property. Chemical property describe how a substance interact with other substance or other matter. For example, hydrogen burn easily with oxygen. We are talking about hydrogen, right? But we are describe the interact with oxygen. So we are talking about this property. We are talking about hydrogen. is a chemical property. Chemical changes involve the formation of new substance. The change is not easily reversible. So chemical change involves the formation of new substance. That means involve the change of chemical composition, like burning gasoline. We will use Bunsen burner in the lab. The gas we are use is methane. Methane gas chemical formula is CH4. And if we burn it, that means it's gonna react with oxygen. It's gonna produce CO2 and water. So before you burn the gasoline, you are CH4, right? The chemical composition is CH4. But after you burn it, it's CO2 and H2O. So they are different. We have new substance, which is CO2 and H2O. They are not CH4 anymore. So this is a chemical change. This is a chemical change. Another one I used in the previous video is H2O. If I go through electrolysis, I break down into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. This is the new substance. This is different with H2O. So new substance. And this process is a chemical change. And we will have a lot of those changes and ask you to identify is a physical change or chemical change in your homework or in your lab. The reaction, another example is a reaction of hydrogen and oxygen to form water. So hydrogen react with oxygen, form water. Do we have new substance? Yes, we do. We have H2O, but we don't have H2O in the beginning. So this process described here is a chemical change. Okay? And we can also use the image to represent the process. And look at this image. We have oxygen gas, we have hydrogen gas, but after the reaction, we only have water. We have H2O. So water, this type of cluster is not there. So that means this cluster is new substance. Then this process is a chemical change, which is actually here, what I just showed you. Hydrogen react with oxygen, produce water. Water is a new substance. Okay, so let's have a look at this. If they give this image and ask you the following image represent a chemical change or a physical change, you should be able to do it. Let's do this together. Before, I have this cluster and this cluster. This represents CH4, which is methane gas. This represents oxygen. After the change, I have this cluster and this cluster, which is not there before, right? You didn't see this cluster there. You didn't see this cluster there. So this is a new substance. That means this is a chemical change. Okay, no matter they give you wording description of the process or they give you image representation of the process, you all have to be able to determine the chemical change or physical change. Just ask yourself, do I have new substance? If no, then you physical change. If yes, then it's a chemical change. Okay, so this is the end of this video.